Obama or Clinton or McCain? Who do you like the best? Believe it or not, the presidential campaign is a common conversation at the office water cooler these days. But is that right? Should you be doing that? Does it take time away from what we are supposed to be doing? That is, work? Let's ask John Challenger of Challenger, Gray and Christmas, and Dr. Bruce Weinstein. He's the author of The Ethics Guy. He's known as The Ethics Guy, and he's the author of the book, Life Principles, Feeling Good by Doing Good. John Challenger, to you first. You think we should be talking politics in the office?
I don't, because the passions this year are just running so high. You might be a Clinton basher. You might love Obama more than any candidate you've seen. If you're a conservative, you are anti-McCain. So this election particularly just seems to have the passion level up. And these arguments could go on for hours in an office or over time and really damage productivity.
All right, Bruce, you are the ethics guy. Is it ethical to argue politics or even to discuss politics?
It's not ethical. There are four things we should not talk about at work: religion, sex, money, and politics. And of course, the most controversial of those four is money. How much you make, how much the other person makes should not be discussed at work because, as you said in the intro, it has nothing to do with our job. It's called a workplace for a reason because we're supposed to do work.
You can't stop it. And why should you deny people the right to just exchange political views at work? It's not like talking about sex. It's not liable.
Well, now let's see. If you and I disagree about, say, Madonna or U2, which is better, that's fine. You have your opinion, I have mine. But if we disagree about a political issue, we think the other is mistaken. And these kinds of arguments can devolve into name-calling, into shouting. Let's face it, what do you think of someone who holds a different political position than you do? A lot of people consider such people idiots, and that kind of attitude can adversely affect how well we do our work, and that's why it's unethical.
John, I've got a problem with what you can say and what you can't say in the American workplace. It seems to me that you're not allowed to have a discussion involving gender, sexuality, involving anything to do with politics, involving almost... What can you... I mean, you can't talk about anything in the office these days and be politically correct. That seems to me to be a horrible infringement on our individual liberties as Americans.
Well, certainly today, we're talking about the ideal world because we do know everybody is talking politics. You're listening to it on the radio, you're watching it on TV, you're reading it in the papers. So we take what we're thinking about and we go into the workplace and we talk with our friends, our colleagues about what's going on. So even though we're all here saying there's damage to productivity, it's not the ethical thing to do, let's face it, the reality is the opposite.
Exactly. I put that to you. That's the reality. They're going to do it.
Well, there are two separate questions here, Stuart. Do we have a right to talk about politics, and is it right to do it? And even if we have a legal and ethical right to talk about these issues, it's not right to do it. And the most fundamental question to ask about any issue is it right to discuss it? And it is not in most cases, in most workplaces, because it not only has nothing to do with the work at hand, it can adversely affect our ability to do our job. And that's why we're there. It is unethical to goof off, to surf the internet for fun, to date a coworker. We could talk about that elsewhere.
Do you really want mute, silent individuals who won't express an opinion on anything because they might offend somebody?
What we want,
is that the America that you want to see?
What we want is a respectful workplace where everybody's freedom
You can't shut people up. You shouldn't.
In fact, what I'm arguing, Stuart, is pro-business and pro-employee.
You're arguing pro-lawyer.
No. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on
pro-lawyer.
because I said you may have a legal right to do this. You may be legally entitled to do it, but it's wrong because it can harm the company's interests, it can harm your relationship with colleagues, and it can harm yourself.
John Challenger, I maintain that dear Bruce, right, Dr. Bruce, right here, is essentially speaking on behalf of lawyers, those people who will sue anybody for saying the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Am I right or am I right, John Challenger?
Stuart, I think you got a point there. And I'm going to go from the productivity one other way. It used to be, that we measured productivity by how much time people spent on their job by the hour. But today we're really looking at their output. So if you have a workplace and people are arguing about politics or whatever else they're conflicted about, but they're getting their job done, they're getting the work out, maybe that's all that really matters.
Okay, now what would you do as an employer if you found your employees having a passionate argument about politics over the water cooler? What would you do, John Challenger, what would you do?
Well, it depends on how rancorous it is. If they were having a civil argument rather than one where it was getting bitter, I would feel that would be okay. But if I had to bring them in because the two of them couldn't work together, or if there was a boss who was inflicting his or her opinions on the subordinates, then I'd say, this is an issue.
Okay, what would you do, Bruce?
There's a time for talking about sex. There's a time for talking about money and religion and politics. It is not in the workplace. And this, again, is something that's intended to protect everybody's interests, not to alienate people, because in most workplaces, it has nothing to do with what we're supposed to be focusing on, which is our work. Now, if you work in a news organization, that's one thing. But for most organizations, most companies in the United States and in the world have no a vested interest in this particular thing. If you and the other thing is, if you and your boss are arguing and it's time for you to get a raise and you have a different political position and you don't get a raise, how will you know that you didn't get a raise because of your political position as opposed to your ability to do the job well?
Against my best instincts, you got the last word.
Oh.
John Challenger, Bruce Weinstein, thanks very much for joining us, gentlemen. Thank you.